You are.
This is August the 27th, 1985, and we're talking with William Lawrence Walker Sr. And he is visiting with us on our patio in back of our home in Eugene, Oregon. This is my father, so I'm going to refer to him as Dad. Dad, when was it you were born?
February the 3rd, 1900,
Where was that?
Newman Grove, Nebraska.
Tell us a little bit about Newman Grove. What did the people do there when you were living there?
It's strictly a farming community. It's a little town, a very small town. It's never had grown up at all. The county, when I was born, there was a division went right through the town.
What do you mean by division?
The division line for the counties, separated the counties.
And you were on what side?
I don't know which side I was on, but I was supposed to be in Pierce County.
I see.
Today, that's all done away with. It's all Madison County. Same thing had happened in Jerome and Shoshone County years and years ago. Jerome was in Shoshone for years and years, and so was Wendell, and then they finally started separating those counties and making them smaller counties.
What did your father and mother do there?
Dad was a miller there, in the milling business. He followed the milling business from boyhood. The old back in Iowa area. His dad run a mill, grist mill they call it, back in Iowa.
And he was born in Iowa?
Huh?
He was born in Iowa?
Your dad father was born in Iowa, yes.
And where did he meet your mother?
In Iowa.
Was she an Iowa girl?
Yeah, they were childhood sweethearts. And I've got a picture home where the old home of my mother's home was across the street from where the little old schoolhouse where they went to school.
Well, where did he meet your mother?
Where did they? Sometime in that area.
Did he meet her there in Newman Grove?
No, they knew each other back in Iowa.
I see.
From the school, the little old schoolhouse they went to.
Well, where did your mother?
They were sweethearts.
Where was she born?
Mother was born in Dahlonega, Iowa, 4 miles out of Ottumwa.
Oh, I see, near Ottumwa. Okay, then this coming back to Newman Grove where you grew up, what did you do?
I didn't grow up in New Grove. We left there when I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Well, can you remember back to anything you did as a child living there? Any games or anything you played with?
In Newman Grove?
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Do you remember any friends that you had there?
None.
Too small for you to remember when you left.
Well, the first time I began to remember anything is when Dad moved out at Emmerich.
Yeah, it's in Idaho.
In Nebraska.
Nebraska? Emmerich's in Nebraska?
It was 11 miles from Newman Grove and 9 miles from Meadow Grove. It's a little old trading spot where their Dad had 4 sections of land there. And he had his brothers working for him there, Uncle Earl and Uncle Elmer.
Well, how many brothers and sisters did he have all total?
Dad had 4 brothers besides himself. There was 5 brothers in the family.
What were all their names?
What were their names?
You
well,
mentioned
my dad
some.
was the oldest,
Okay.
William Jacob, and then there was Elmer Walker, and then there was Earl Walker, and there's Jess Walker, and Uncle John Walker. I think that was the 5 brothers.
No sisters?
No sisters.
How about your mother's people? Did she have any brothers and sisters?
Oh, there was a lot of, quite a good-sized family in my mother's side.
Do you know any of their names?
Her oldest sister was Mary, and there was Oni. I don't know. I can't remember right offhand.
Didn't she have a sister or that was a twin?
There was brothers. She had brothers. She had Ira Long, Ira.
Didn't you tell me your mother was a twin?
My mother was born a twin.
Yeah.
Her twin died at birth.
Oh, she never lived?
Never lived.
But she was a stillborn child?
I don't think so. They named her Estella,
But she didn't really actually live then.
but she didn't live
I
long.
see. Let's go back to a
My
minute.
mother, they were very small at that time, about 4 or 5 pounds. They weren't very big girls at all when they were born.
Didn't have any of the prenatal clinics they do now then.
No.
Let's talk a little bit about where you were born. When you were living there, what were the consistency of your family then? You had older brothers and sisters by your mother?
I had a younger brother and an older sister. My mother and father were childhood sweethearts to start with. And my dad's uncle, William Walker, got him sold on the idea of going to Colorado. And Dad and Will Walker went to Colorado, to Cripple Creek country and Leadville country during the mining boom. And they were out there 14 years. In the meantime, Will Halbert came to teach this school across the street from where the Lane's home was, and Mother finally married him. And they were married for 7 years. But he contracted consumption. They call it consumption those days. It's tuberculosis today. And on his deathbed, he suggested my mother get in touch with Will Walker and come back and marry him and take care of his 2 children, a girl and a boy, Elaine and Virgil. And after a short while, I guess they finally did come back, and Dad married my mother in 1897. Alma was born on June the 10th, 1898, and I was born February the 3rd, 1900. And Babe was born on February the 1st, 1902. That consists of our family.
Now,
and they moved then later on from Iowa into Nebraska.
Now let me understand this. Your mother had how many children all total?
She had 5.
5 altogether. 2 by the first marriage and
3 for the last.
3 for the last. I remember you telling me about your Uncle Elmer, and I've met him. What can you tell me about your older sister, your stepsister?
My older stepsister? I think she was a school teacher when we were living in Emmerich. She was a very nice looking girl, not too tall, had very long hair, hung clear back down back almost to her, well,
waist, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, waist anyway.
Okay.
And she married a Russell Twist. Russell Twist lived in Meadow Grove. That is 2 miles south of Meadow Grove, where the old man Twist's home was.
Now, didn't Russell work in the milling business too?
No, he helped his dad on the farm.
I see.
They were interested in purebred cattle and purebred horses and things like that. They always had the best there was.
Did they have any children, your sister?
My sister had, as far as I can remember, about 6 girls.
No boys?
I don't remember there ever being any boys being read. There was one of the girls living down in Colorado Springs when Jack was there, but he never got in touch with her. She was married living there.
Now tell me about your older brother, your stepbrother. What was he like?
Well, Virgil was quite well educated. He had a beautiful memory, a wonderful speller. He worked on the railroad track, on the railroad, I don't know how long, quite a little while. When they had these cars, that people lived in the cars and did the work on the railroads. That was the first thing that I can ever remember ever doing. And then later on, he went to Chicago, and he worked for C.F. Adams and Company in Chicago, a clothing retailer. I think they were a Jewish concern. And he worked back there several years, and he met Mabel, his wife. She was a bookkeeper for this C.F. Adams, and they got married back there.
Didn't he move west later?
And then after we moved to Jerome, I think we were in Jerome about 2 years when they came out to Jerome to live.
I see. Let's talk a little bit about your own immediate family. What can you tell me about your older sister, Alma?
Well, she was a beautiful girl. That is, she was had a wonderful disposition. Everybody loved her. She was a wonderful girl. Very much like my mother. Just wanted to...
She looked like your mother?
Did
she look like your mother?
No, not much, no. But when she was growing up, she had cross eyes. Eyes become... And they finally got lens on them that brought her eyes, straightened her eyes out. Last time I saw her, though, was down in Ventura when we went down as a visitor.
I was with you then.
I remember her crying when we left there because she knew that something was going to happen. She evidently had cancer then and didn't know it.
Now she had, what? How many children?
One girl.
What was hobbies that she enjoyed doing?
Did what?
Did she have any hobbies?
Yeah, she worked in the Masonic or Eastern Star. She become very active in Eastern Star. In fact, she was the matron, I guess, for that whole southern Idaho, southern Utah at one time.
What can you tell us?
Southern California.
What can you tell us about your brother, your younger brother?
I don't know if I ought to even repeat it.
Well, what kind of work did he do, and who was he married to?
Well, Babe was a funny guy. He was a very jealous. I don't know, he seemed to be always jealous of me, always trying to take advantage of me when he possibly could. He was always picking on me. And he'd always run to Dad and report anything I did. Dad would side in with him. My mother was always on my side. And the last time I can remember, he just kept picking, and I finally threw him down in the backyard. And I held him down. He screamed like a pig being stuck. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to let you up until you cut it out entirely and quit bothering me. I'm not going to put up with it no more. And he finally promised he could it, and he did. I didn't have much more trouble with him for a long, long time.
What kind of work did he do?
Most of that day labor. He worked on the farm quite a bit for different people he could find work with.
When he got older.
But we run a dairy for a long time. You remember that? And he milked cows the same as I did, and helped her in the chores.
Well, in his later life, what kind of work did he do?
He got into the oil business down in Long Beach for the petroleum rectifying people. And he worked with them, and then for a while, and then they finally, I think they made him a foreman of a crew that put in these dehydrators for the oil people. These dehydrators cleared if the oil come out of the ground, it went through that dehydrator and purified the oil and come out where the oil could be sold into to the refinery. And that's what those dehydrators did. They took the dirt and crap out of the oil that's coming out of the ground.
Who did your brother?
And then later on, he was even moved for them for this petroleum rectifying into Bakersfield. And he went up there and he had the district for Bakersfield for a long time. And he got into the idea that picking up this oil out of these sumps that was coming out of the well until the oil cleared out itself. And he'd pick up that oil and haul it to town and clean it and sell it back to the refinery. And he finally left the petroleum rectifier and got into that entirely.
Tell us about who he was married to.
He married a girl that came out of Canada. She lived in Canada, and she come down to that part of the country, and her name was Jean McKay.
Did they have any children?
None.
Okay.
If they ever did, they had a miscarriage. I'm not sure about that. I understood they did. I think Stella said they did, but they never had any children at all.
Okay, after you were back in Idaho, see, you were living around Jerome, you told me. What did you do there? You helped with the farm as a milker on your dad's dairy farm?
We moved to Jerome, Idaho on January the 28th, 1909. And we came out of Nebraska, and Dad had 6 milk cows, and he shipped this immigrant car into Jerome, Idaho. And as soon as we got there, we started selling milk. And we got 10 cents a quart for this milk, which was really expensive for that time of the year. But people would come to our place to get milk because nobody had any milk in the country. And we got started in the dairy business. And we run the dairy for 2 years. And a fellow by the name of Craig Denton owned a piece of land about 2 miles west of Jerome. And he offered to trade a 40 acres piece of land, of his land, to Dad for our dairy. He wanted to get in the dairy business. And we traded. And we moved out to this 2 miles west of Jerome on the home that they had, and we'd built a little home 2 miles east of Jerome. And they picked up that little home and moved it clear through town to west of Jerome and put it on that land that he had traded for. And we lived out there a couple of years. And then we finally moved in back in Jerome. And Dad went to work for coal and lumber people, helping unload cars of coal and helping around the chores. And I guess it was another couple more years before Craig Denton got tired of the dairy business. He turned around and sold it back out and sold it back to Dad, and we got back in the dairy business again for 7 years. And my brother and I helped Dad with the chores and milking and feeding the cattle and cleaning the barns and milking and taking the milk into the house and have it. We run it over a cooler to get the animal heat out of it and get it cooled, and then they bottled it and we delivered it around town.
What did you like to do when you weren't working on the farm? Did you have any hobbies or any sports?
I didn't work on the farm very little until later years.
What about sports?
Well, I was active in sports at school.
What kinds of things did you play?
I played baseball, and I played basketball, and I played football. And I was always very active because I was so quick and fast that I did as much as some of the larger kids did because I was physically strong and was very active, and I could get along as well as any of them could.
Well, after you got a little older, you went to Corvallis, Oregon for a while. Will you tell us about that?
Well, my dad and my mother took me to Shoshone, the county seat, to register for the draft. Sometime, I think it was along in July 1918. I just got through school in May. The little class was left, and I think there wasn't many more than about 8 people to graduate out of that class for 1918. A couple boys, and I was one of them. The rest were girls. The rest of the boys in the class had gone into the service. So we got an idea. I don't know who gave us the idea that we could get into the officers training camp if we'd enlist. So there was 4 of us. Went to Corvallis, Oregon. Boydie Fraser, Dick Freeman, George Gerwell, and myself, 4 of us. And we went over to Corvallis and enlisted in this army, which was supposed to have been an officer training camp, but it was nothing more or less than just a regular privates, all it amounted to. It was just a come on to get people interested. 2 of us passed examinations and the other 2 didn't. Boydie Fraser and Dick Freeman went home. Dick Freeman had leakage of the heart. I don't know what Boydie Fraser had, but he didn't pass. But they sent him home. And Boydie Fraser went home only a short time, and he was drafted again and sent to Moscow. And it was during the time when the flu was so bad, and he contracted the flu and died. They sent him home. He only lived, I guess, a couple months after I last saw him.
After you went to Corvallis, how long were you there?
Well, I was in from September to the 21st of December.
How come they let you come home?
We were discharged. War was over. Armistice was signed the 11th of November, and we were mustered out of the service. And paid $60 for our discharge papers and give us a discharge and sent us home.
What did you do when you got home?
Well, I worked around town there a little bit. I think I went to work for a fellow by the name of Dick McDowell in a battery service station where we built batteries. They take the old battery out, tear it to pieces, clean it up, put new plates back in the batteries, and put the liquid in there, and put this chemicals we used, seal the battery back together, and put it on the line and recharge it, and sold it as a battery.
You used to tell me about the time you spent on the old P Ranch. How old were you when you were there?
I was about between 20 and 21.
Well, was that before you went to Corvallis or afterward?
Oh, after I come home.
What did you do on the ranch?
After the war was over, they couldn't find a job. The business was just dropped down to nothing. There was the worst recession, I think, of it we ever had. There was nobody had work. There wasn't nothing to do. You couldn't sell anything. And I had been working in a hardware store. In fact, I started in a grocery store. And Virgil came along, and Clyde Thompson was running a hardware store. He kept after me and wanted me to go to work for him. So I went and worked, quit Hughes and went down to work for Clyde Thompson. And I think that was in about the 21.
What did you do?
February in 1921. And that was when the Depression was on so badly. And finally, in 2 weeks before Christmas, Clyde Thompson had 7 of us working for him and let us all go except one. He kept Virgil and himself on the job. There was no job to be had. And I couldn't find a job until March. March, I went to work on a farm. And I worked about a month for one fellow, got his crop in. I got a job of irrigating on for another farm for about, it must have been 6 weeks maybe, until the first haying come on. And Dad had been in when he sold his dairy, he bought horses and harness from Camp Lewis, and he matched up the teams and sold the teams to the farmers there in Jerome. And he had one team left in harness, and I took the team in harness and out to the hill ranch and worked them on a buck rake out there until they got the hay up, and we accumulated enough money that we went to eastern Oregon. And Babe run around with a fella that had an Ames whole 8 four-cylinder Haynes car. Red Mitchell was his name, and I don't know, they were awfully thick. He was a lot older than Babe. And George Gerbil and I, the four of us, went to Crane, Oregon, and got a job from Eastern Oregon Livestock, which was run by a fellow by the name of Craven. He was a manager, and he sent us to work. And we stayed there a year in that valley, working from one ranch to another, they're putting up hay and running in the stacks and feeding the cattle in the winter time when they couldn't get the feed out of the mountains, and fed them there in the valley. And I was out there a year.
You then came back to Jerome, and after a few years you courted and married your wife, Estella Marie, who you've been married to how many years now?
After I come back from a Malheur country there in Crane, Oregon, I went to work in the Northside Inn as their day clerk and taking care of checking people out and collecting the rent or collecting their night's rent, typing up the menus and watching here and there for a woman by the name of Sperling. She was the manager of this Northside Inn. And I was working there a while, and L.L. Skaggs and Frank Clark came down to Jerome and was staying at the Northside Inn while they were putting in a grocery store in Jerome. And L.L. and Frank liked me so well that they wanted me to go to work for them. And I was very much interested in going to work for them. And in several weeks, or a couple of weeks anyway, but I didn't hear from them. Finally, I went down to talk to Poole, the manager of the store, and asked him why I hadn't heard. Well, they said they've been trying to get a hold of me. Miss Sperling wouldn't tell me because she didn't want to lose me. So I got on the phone, we called L.L. Skaggs in Pocatello.